speaking of mash for brains, should we talk about the New South Wales Supreme Court? They have overturned tough government rules put in place by the coalition to stop protesters blocking major facilities like ports, roads, railways. But those laws were challenged by, can you believe it, the Knitting Nannas protest group, a couple of old lady climate protesters. They challenged these rules, and the Supreme Court found that the rules put in place, supported by the Minns government, put in place by the previous government, violated people's constitutional rights. Essentially what it means is that while it's still illegal to completely block a port or a railroad or other facilities, it's not illegal to partially block such facilities. Now, of course, this ruling comes just in time for Christmas. So we've already got pro-Palestinian protests. We've got climate protests every other weekend. You can just imagine the encouragement that this decision is now going to give to protesters. Here's Christopher Minns talking about the court's decision.
Can I just cycle all the way back to the reason for these laws being in place and why Labor supported them? People were doing, frankly, stupid things, putting themselves in extreme danger to make what they term political protests, hanging from cranes that were located on top of railway lines, chaining themselves to roads with heavy vehicles operating in the vicinity. It would only take a split second for a worker not to see a protester lying on the ground, for example, to see a tragedy take place.
Liz, good decision, standing up for people's rights to protest, or bad decision, violating people's rights to go about their business?
It's a fine line here, right? Because normally I'm not a fan of anyone who's clamping down on people's right to protest. I'm like, oh, that's funny, because we're usually protesting something the government's done, and therefore you guys giving yourself powers to clamp down on this, you do me a favour, like sit down before you hurt yourselves. But in this case, obviously, you're stopping people from going about their lawful business en masse. We're getting people hanging from bridges, gluing themselves to roads, etc., and so on. So this is very interesting from the Supreme Court. People want to know, especially if I'm jumping in my car to go to work of a morning in the Sydney CBD or anywhere else for that matter, you want to know you're going to be able to get there. Yeah. So I love that the state has once again made laws that it finds out later, you actually can't make those, much like the federal government found out recently regarding a different matter involving detainees. But they're making laws that sound good at the time. Everyone goes, yes, we hug each other in the streets and cry with relief, so that we're no longer hostages of these crazy people who just want to get on their soapbox and inconvenience us all while they're at it. Then something like this happens. We find out the entire thing was a furphy. But like I've said all along, the government is never and will truly never crack down on these people. Why? Because they are pushing the government's own agenda, which is believe in the legitimacy of this agenda so we can do stuff like we just discussed at the top of the show. Slowly tightening the noose around your neck, use less energy, no, can't have nuclear, but use less energy, be smaller, can't have a car, this is too expensive, on and on and on it goes.
This needs to go to the High Court because this is based on the New South Wales Supreme Court's interpretation of the implied right to political expression in the federal constitution, right? So you can take that to the High Court and challenge it. And the High Court may have a very different idea about what our implied right to political expression entails. Because I would have thought your implied right to political expression says that you can say anything politically without fear of retribution or arrest for doing so. It doesn't go so far as to suggest that you can then disrupt everyone else outside of the laws that already exist. I mean, if you want to run a protest, call up the cops. They can organise it for you. They'll give you a police escort, the whole thing. There are rules within you can do legitimate protest. What these people do is not that. They disobey all of those rules. So I think it needs to be tested in the High Court because when you talk about rights, one person's rights will always impinge upon someone else's, right? And so we're talking about two different types of freedom here. The freedom to protest and the freedom to go about business and conduct business. And what these people are doing is stopping others from conducting business. Now, surely if you're weighing up rights, you've got to go with the side that benefits the most people. And the one that benefits the most people is being able to go about your business. End of story. If the New South Wales government doesn't take it to the High Court, they're a bunch of squibs.
The other problem, if the government don't take it to the High Court, as you've suggested, is we're going to end up with someone getting hurt, because when they block roads, like we saw in Sydney, you know, where they blocked the Harbour Bridge, and so you've got gridlock, people trying to get to work, you've got ambulances trying to get places, someone's going to get out of their car and bop one of these people.
Of course
We've seen it happen overseas. So there's that aspect as well, that the government should be watching where this is going and saying, hey, we can't afford to just have a laissez-faire attitude. Why are you smirking at me, Liz?
Because of what I keep repeatedly saying. The government will put on a show and be like, yeah, we're cracking down on these people. We can't have this happening to all you poor people. You're so inconvenienced by this. Let's be seen to do something, which is 99% of any party's policies. But then when it comes to the crunch, of course they should take it to the High Court. Yeah, let's duke it out. Let's sort this out once and for all. We can't have thousands of people inconvenienced by a handful on their soapbox. But do you think they'll do it? I'll bet you any money.
Just one
right
problem with
now,
your argument, though.
They won't take it to the High Court.
But then why did they institute the tough laws in the first place?
Have you seen them actually penalise anyone using those tough laws there? No. Coco was a perfect example. They put her in the clink for less than 2 weeks, and then she got out on appeal, scot-free. It's all a farce, if you ask me. There is no genuine intention to actually properly penalise these people. And what would be far more suitable than jail, I think, is just fines. Because...
What about just leaving them there? Glue yourself to the road, we'll leave you there and come throw rotten tomatoes at you.
Well, obviously that won't work, but then we'll never get to work on time. But the fact that now we, the people, are being told, well, as long as you can redirect yourself and still get to work somehow through some, I don't know, back lane alley. What if it takes you an extra hour? The government doesn't care. Supreme Court just said, oh, no, it's perfectly legal. As long as you can get where you're going some other way, we'll move on.